listeners?
We are talking about the so-called Google
So-called.
diversity update.
Why do you call it a so-called update?
Well, because Google hasn't said anything. It's not an official. This is what Joy from Sterling Sky has named it, I believe.
Okay. Joy likes
And
naming things.
well, it's great positioning for her. She's leading the way on this research. And Conrad, why don't you tell me what you think the Google diversity update is?
Well, unfortunately, Joy called it the diversity update, which gives away the fact that she is clearly not in the United States. She is clearly Canadian at the risk of citing something else. But no one would ever call anything diversity today in the United States. But I digress. So the diversity update essentially is something that Joy discovered doing some testing that basically says the local rankings and organic rankings are inversely related because Google would like, the theory is because Google would like to show diversity in those results. Thus, if you rank really well in the local results, you will not rank really well in the organic results. And this is, there are two very important nuances to this. Number one, this is a mobile thing. And number two, it is a URL thing, which doesn't make any sense to me at all. But that's what she has shown. And because it's a URL thing, Google does not want to rank the exact same URL in local as they do in organic. And because of that, you can have a workaround to the diversity update, which basically uses a different URL for the same type of phrase for your firm to rank both locally and organically. Do you want to clarify any of my
Yeah.
explanation?
This is what I would say. You said that they work inversely. I think it's from the way I read it, essentially sites that ranked in the local pack that also ranked in the traditional organic results got demoted. The pages got demoted from the traditional organic results. Now, and you're right, it's page specific. And she said she's seeing she in fact two things I thought were interesting from her video on it. One is that she primarily tracks mobile. It almost implied that maybe she's not tracking desktop, which I thought was an interesting thing. And the other thing, I think Colin said this in their video, that forever their best practice was to link their most relevant page. So in context of legal, if you have an office location page for a specific city, use that in your Google business profile. And I've found that that's not always the best practice. Sometimes we have found that using the homepage, even for multi-location firms, the homepage will outperform the location specific page. Is not consistent though. We've got some firms where the location page is actually better. Yada yada yada. My takeaway from that is make sure you're testing these things on your own site because it's not universally true.
Remember that we're going to come back to the make sure you're testing this on your own sites because
Yeah.
it's not universally true.
And the other thing that I wanted to ask you, now that
Yeah.
we've kind of clarified what we wrap our heads around this, have you seen this happening for your clients at scale?
Well, so this is one of my concerns with anecdotal studies.
That's not the answer. Answer the question, Conrad.
Jeez, I'm trying to equivocate here.
Go ahead and equivocate.
So let me answer your question by answering how we are trying to evaluate whether or not we have seen this. And this is a timing thing. So we are looking. So this allegedly rolled out around August.
Mm-hmm.
It started showing its head around August, and kind of picked up speed through December. Okay. And so in order to evaluate this, what you need to do for your own firm is look at, and I think people use rankings. I really hate rankings, but depending on how much data you have to work with, rankings might be the right way.
What do you mean by rankings?
Look at a local Falcon scan and look at your organic rankings prior to August. I would prefer, bluntly,
Can't do that. Can't do that.
to look at traffic.
I can't do that either.
Why?
Because well, I guess you could. You need to look at rankings for this,
You need to look at rankings. Okay.
but you can't use Local Falcon because Local Falcon doesn't show you both the local pack and traditional organic in the
That's
same
my point.
screen.
Right.
But there are tools that do, and so the way that we're using Stat. I mean, we're oversubscribed to all these tools, just to be completely frank with you.
What is your tools
But
budget?
it's embarrassing. But let me that's a different recording. Your methodology is correct. So you need to go to a rank tracker. You need to go to a rank tracker that's tracking mobile results. And you need to look at a rank tracker that's been tracking both local pack and traditional organic, preferably in the same report.
But you're going to
Because
use the same tool for that, right?
well, so I could walk through why I think it's problematic to do with multiple tools, but to me, what you want to see is you want to see the mobile result with local pack and traditional organic, and you have to be capturing this, as you mentioned, from you've been having to track this prior to August.
Right.
And you're looking for examples where you held at least a position in the local pack, and I call it a top 3 position for the traditional organic prior to August. And then you saw your organic listing get demoted. So that's the pattern that you're looking for.
Right.
I asked my team, we went through every one of our clients. We didn't see it. And to Joy's credit, she's saying, look, there's plenty. We have clients too that plenty of instances where they didn't get hit. She said that it's most likely to occur with firms that have been historically dominant in their market. So you take a firm that's a multi-location firm that's been dominant in the map pack and traditional. Those are the ones that she has seen been impacted the most. And again, I'm kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop. Maybe we will see this happen. Maybe it's a slow rollout. This goes to,
Well,
go ahead.
No. I was going to say August to December, that's a slow rollout, even for Google.
Yeah, I agree. The other thing that I wanted to come back to your point about anecdotal research, and there are a million other things that could be going on here.
Well, that's the problem, right?
Right. And maybe Google will come out and say we've made an update and we're trying to do diversification. The other interesting thing is that now 2 things actually, because one thing, when this first came out, this reminded me of something that you said you heard at a conference. Someone at a conference said that by ranking in the local pack, you might impact your ability to rank in the traditional organic results. Do you remember this? We record. It's one of the episodes. We'll have to go find it.
Was I making fun of somebody?
You were. And so I was like, wow. I was like, maybe this person was onto something way before anybody else was.
Okay. If we talked about this, here's the interesting thing. There's a correlation between the two, right? Like the things that help you rank in organic,
yes,
and the things that help you rank in local are correlated.
Yes, and in fact, it's not always true, but a lot of the time you see the local pack. I mean, this is why Joy's bringing this up, because historically, you're in the local pack, you're probably showing up on the first page for something for the same query. Not always.
Yeah, not always. But I do think it's important to note that there's a Venn diagram overlap between the tactics that will get you ranking in both of those things.
100%.
And the predominant component of that Venn diagram overlap is both proximity of the searcher as well as your localized backlink profile, which we've talked about ad nauseum.
There it is. Links once again entering the conversation.
For those of you who were waiting for 1038 until we said links and local links,
yeah. And then I think the other thing too, and you already said this, but I think it's important to give some folks a constructive tactical takeaway here is the thing. If you think this is happening to you, so first of all, be sure that it's happening to you before you start messing around, because we all know how fragile the local listings can be if you start swapping out URLs and stuff. But if you're like, hey, look, I know this is happening to me, I validated it, then you might try to change the URL in your Google business profile away from, most of the time it's probably going to be from an individual office location page to your homepage and
Yep.
see what happens. See if that, and the question what you'll be looking for is does that other page, that location page, rise back up in the traditional organic results? And hopefully you don't drop out of the local pack.
Right. Right. And so the other tactic on this has been suggested was to not the homepage, but a geo practice area page that is not
Your location page.
Your location page, right? So both of those have been said to work. But again, I think a couple things. I think you need to go back to data before August, which if you're our client, we have that for you. But you may not be able to find that for yourself. You may not have even taken those ranking snapshots, which would be a problem. So if you haven't done that, like, don't do a damn thing because you have no idea.
Right.
Number two, I think you also need to recognize that this is a deprecation of the results. So if you find that you are ranking number 2 or 3 or 4, that doesn't mean that it hasn't impacted you, because you possibly were at 1 or 2, which is why Guy was so focused on the actual rankings. You can still be showing up, but it may be showing up in a much less valuable spot. And Guy, I wanted to ask you this question. I'm not being Socratic here.
Yes, I love it.
A lot of this is based around the user's location, both local search and organic search. And so that adds to the complexity of actually trying to identify how you are performing, especially when it comes to organic listings, right?
And yes. So I just, you just maybe think of something that I didn't do, but I started to do, but I didn't do it systematically because I was being lazy because it's easier to look in the rank tracker. You can also look in Search Console if you've been segmenting your GBP listing from your traditional, because Search Console will have your average position change during the time period. So you can compare your GBP URL and then the corresponding, the same URL that's been showing up, and check to see if that position has changed. And doing some quick math here, yeah, you should still have that data because it goes back 16 months in Search Console. So everybody should have that. But to your point, and this is the other thing too that I would validate, and this was another thing that was interesting from this conversation is, are you getting, and you were trying to say that, maybe you were trying to say this and before I rudely interrupted you, but even if you're ranking, are you getting any traditional organic traffic to these pages? Right?
Yeah.
Because, and in fact, in Joy's post, she said to some of her clients, they had actually lost leads. They were getting more leads from I don't know if she had mentioned if it was a law firm or not that she was talking about in her example, but she had said in the post that these clients had actually lost leads from traditional organic. They were getting more leads from traditional organic than their Google business profile. In that case, like, this should be a priority thing, because you validated now on data that you were getting leads from those pages, from those traditional organic listings, and you've lost, that lead number has gone down because of your diminished position. That is a strong argument for, hey, we actually need to prioritize this organic ranking, even if at the risk of losing the Google business profile, the local pack listing, in my view.
Especially because those leads for these types of pages tend to be low funnel, high converting.
Right. Now, again, I was surprised because for most of what we see, and it's not, again, no universal truths here, but when we're in the local pack and we're in a traditional organic, the local pack tends to drive more business than the traditional organic in terms of actual leads, right? So even though we might get more traffic to a page, like you might get clicks, if you compare, for us, if you compare phone calls to phone calls, we get the phone calls on the Google business profile GBP tend to to outperform. But
I'm making the assumption that is primarily due to brand search.
right, there's a lot of ifs in
nuance.
there. Yeah,
Nuance that you
right.
can't get granular on.
We cannot segment calls by brand versus non-brand. Now you can segment impressions and clicks, but
and I imagine someone who does well in the local pack probably has strong brand presence, blah blah blah.
Yeah, I think that's probably mostly true.
Yeah.
And then, that's another interesting thing too, is that, well, I don't know. You'd think that the page in the traditional organic, that would tend to be more non-brand.
Correct. Yeah.
However, I think this is like an interesting thing that's going on right now. If you have brand awareness, even for those non-brand queries, you're going to, regardless of position, you're probably commanding more of a disproportionate number of clicks. So even if it's a non-brand search, your brand is getting those clicks. And so it's like, there's no way to be able to tell what triggered the click, like whether it was, the search, the brand, yada yada. So you didn't ever answer my question if you've seen it for your clients.
We are looking at it.
Okay. Fair.
We have not. So we have looked at it at a cursory level and have not seen anything.
Okay.
And I know we are now diving deeper. But there were no alarm bells, or I don't think there was anything that we are going to make a big hullabaloo change for.
Cool. Same.
All right.
So
far, if you're listening, you've heard us basically say this may or may not be a thing. It's hard to evaluate. But I do think, like, go big picture. If you feel like things have gotten quiet, like, go back to the business side of this. If you feel like things have gotten quiet, this might be a path that you want to dig deeper into, right? Really dig deep. Look before August, look after August. Look for your rankings if you have them, and consider redirecting, or not redirecting, but changing the destination URL and seeing what happens. Because if nothing's happening right now, trying something, shaking the bottle, can have a positive impact.
Yeah, another thing out of this that this is more like the nasal gazing stuff.
Nasal gazing?
Navel gazing. Nasal gazing.
Though, here, would you like, here's some nasal gazing for you.
Know why that happened. I always, even, when you had said this, there's a lot of overlap between the signaling that impacts local pack and traditional organic. Yeah. But I've really been operating the assumption that they're essentially separate algorithms that might take in some of the same signaling. And this would say that no, they're actually, there's the algorithm is making this diversity assessment.
Oh, 100%. I mean, that's the argument, right? Like, they've always been separate. There are some Venn diagram overlaps of the tactics that are common.
Right.
But this is actually saying that there's a part of the algorithm is driven by the performance. But part of the organic algorithm is driven by the performance of the local algorithm, which honestly, as a publisher, makes a ton of sense. I remember, this goes way back into the early days of lawyers on the interwebs, but when Avvo came out and the lawyers were ranked based on their Avvo rating, those, you would end up with, Janet Smith dominating the first spot, and we built Janet's business because she was generating so much interest. And then number 2, 3 got a little bit. Number 4, 5, 6 just didn't exist. We introduced the jiggle, which basically jiggled around. That Avvo 10 was actually had decimals behind it, and so we would jiggle around within all of the tens, and it was deliberately trying to spread the wealth. That's what's happening here. And as a publisher, that makes a ton of sense, because you know what happens then, Guy? If you're a really aggressive marketer and you've lost one of your positions because you're otherwise dominating the free stuff, now you're going to up your pay-per-click budget. So that's the cynic in me. But as a publisher, I can totally understand why this would be part of it.
Well, and again, we know that diversity is a factor in the traditional organic results. We know that Google does not want to show the same domain 5 times for, one of these queries. But crossing the barrier into the local pack to apply that to the local pack, that would be new. And then the other thing that I thought about was whether or not user engagement might be playing a role in why this might be happening. Because again, it's so dynamic. These search results are so dynamic now, and especially when you're in a period of high flux. If you're showing up in the local pack and you were showing up in the traditional organic results, but people aren't clicking on your traditional organic result. Maybe it's because they're clicking on your local pack result. You could be demoted because your organic click. And again, I'm doing a lot of stretching here, but the user signaling for your traditional organic URL is actually down because they're not clicking on that.
So you're saying this could be a different tail wagging the same dog.
Yeah, it could have the essentially the same outcome, same output,
right?
But as a result of not from Google intentionally trying to demote you because of diversity, but because there's some signaling going on that traditional organic result shouldn't be ranking there anymore. And the other thing too that I would be looking at is, what does the competition in the traditional organic results look like? Like, did a bunch of other sites, are they earning links and creating pages and all this yada yada yada, like while you're more flat? Because obviously then it might not be a demotion. It might just be that the impact of, and in fact, in Joy's context, Joy would be the first to acknowledge that her research has shown that increased link growth actually disproportionately impacts organic rankings than local pack. And so the reasoning would be, well, maybe these competitors are actually just outperforming in traditional organic, but they're not outperforming in local pack.
You're suggesting that this is all because a bunch of lawyers have hired Guy and Conrad.
Well, all right. That's all the time we've got.
That's all we got.